Rich man uses his 4-year-old daughter as bait to catch a panther, but this horse saw everything and... Comment what you think will happen. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. Your help is very important. The March rain poured down on the lands of Harmony Creek, turning the dirt roads into slippery mud pits. Deep in the woods, where only the sounds of nature echoed among the ancient trees, a scene of cruelty unfolded under the cloak of darkness. Richard Sterling, at 52, was known throughout the county as the Coffee King, owner of the largest ranches. In rural Kentucky, his hands, calloused from work, never trembled when making tough business decisions, but on this cold night they were shaking for a different reason. It wasn't fear, nor regret. It was haste. At his feet, tied against the rough trunk of an old oak tree, was Lily, his daughter, only 4 years old. The child's blue eyes, normally sparkling like sapphires, were now clouded with terror and confusion. Her floral dress, clean and pressed that morning, was now torn and covered in mud. "Daddy, please take me home," the little girl whimpered, her small voice almost drowned out by the sound of the rain, which was beginning to fall more intensely. "It's very dark here, I'm scared." Richard didn't answer. His hard, steel-grey eyes were fixed on the darkness of the woods. For 3 weeks, a panther had been attacking his livestock, causing enormous losses. He had lost 12 head of cattle in the last month alone, and the cowboys were afraid to go out to pasture. Something had to be done, and he had found the perfect solution. The sisal rope that bound the child to the tree was tight, but not enough to hurt her. Richard had calculated everything. The panther would come, attracted by the girl's cries. He would be hidden nearby with his rifle, and the problem would be solved. It was a simple and effective plan. Lily would be just the bait. "You'll stay here for a little while," he said finally, his rough voice cutting through the damp night air. "Daddy will be around. No need to be scared." But the lie sounded false even to him. Richard had chosen that location precisely because it was far enough from his property. If something went wrong, if the panther arrived before he could shoot, no one could blame him. It would just be a tragic accident. The rain began to fall harder, and the icy drops dripped from the leaves of the trees onto Lily's face. She was trembling, more from the cold than from fear now, her thin little body contracting against the rough bark of the tree. "Daddy, don't go," she pleaded, extending her small hands towards the man. "I promise I'll be good. I promise I won't make any noise when you're working." For a moment, something akin to hesitation passed through Richard's eyes. Lily had always been an obedient child, rarely causing trouble, but she represented a burden in his life, a responsibility he had never truly wanted to assume. And now, she could be useful in a way he had never imagined. "Be quiet," he muttered, already moving away among the trees. "Daddy will be right back." But his words were lost in the wind that was starting to blow harder, shaking the treetops and making dry leaves dance in the air. Lily screamed her father's name several times, but only the echo of her own voice answered her. Miles away, hidden in the shadows of the woods, a white horse watched everything in silence. His dark eyes gleamed in the darkness, and his flared nostrils picked up all the scents carried by the wind. He was a wild, free animal who had never known the hand of man or the weight of a saddle. At 8 years old, he had already learned to distrust humans. He had seen many of his kind captured and taken away, but there was something different about this scene. The desperate cries of the child awakened in him an instinct that even he did not fully understand. It was as if an ancient voice coming from far away whispered in his ears that this little soul needed protection. The horse remained motionless for long minutes, watching Richard move further and further away. The man carried a rifle and walked with determined steps, but in the opposite direction to the child. There was no doubt that he was abandoning the girl in that dark and dangerous place. When he finally lost sight of Richard's figure among the trees, The horse began to approach slowly. His hooves made noise on the wet leaves, but he moved with the natural grace of someone who knew every inch of those woods. Lily, frightened by the sound, raised her head and her eyes widened as she saw the white silhouette emerging from the darkness. "Pretty horsey," she whispered, her voice choked with tears. "Did you come to help me?" The animal stopped a few feet away, studying the situation. He could feel the child's fear, but also a purity that touched him deeply. There was no malice in that little being, only confusion and helplessness. The rain continued to fall, harder and harder, and would soon become a storm. Lily needed to get out of there, and quickly. The horse approached closer, lowering his majestic head until it was at the girl's height. She reached out a trembling hand and gently touched his velvety muzzle. "You're warm," she murmured, feeling a little comfort for the first time since she had been brought to that terrible place. It was then that the horse did something that would forever change the destiny of both. Carefully he began to gnaw on the ropes that bound the child, his strong teeth working patiently until the fibers broke completely. Lily was free, but she was too weak to walk. Without hesitation, the horse lowered himself, allowing her to climb on his back. And so, under the torrential rain that now lashed the woods, a wild horse carried an abandoned girl away from danger, while in the shadows of the night, the hungry eyes of a panther shone in the darkness, following the trail that would lead them exactly to the place where Lily had been tied just minutes before. The horse galloped through the dark woods, his hooves instinctively finding the safest paths between the trees. Lily clung tightly to his white mane, her small body trembling violently from cold and shock. The rain had turned into a furious storm, and lightning illuminated the sky intermittently, creating frightening shadows among the dense vegetation. "Where are we going?" the girl murmured, but her voice was swallowed by the deafening noise of the rain. The horse seemed to know exactly where he was taking his little passenger, heading towards a higher region of the woods, where the rocks formed a natural wall against the wind. After what seemed like hours of riding, but which was actually only 30 minutes, the animal finally stopped in front of an opening in the rock. It was a natural grotto, carved by water and time, with an entrance large enough to shelter both. The horse lowered himself carefully, allowing Lily to get off his back. The girl could barely stand, her little legs wobbly from so much fear and fatigue. The grotto was wider than it seemed from the outside. The floor was covered by a layer of dry leaves that had been brought by the wind over the years, creating a kind of natural carpet. At the back, small drops of water trickled down, the stone wall forming a crystalline pool. It was a perfect refuge, protected from the rain and wind that lashed the woods outside. Lily curled up in a corner, hugging her knees to her chest. Her dress was completely soaked and stuck to her body, and she began to chatter her teeth from the cold. The horse approached and lay down beside her, offering the warmth of his large, strong body. The girl, still wary but desperate for any source of comfort, snuggled against the animal's soft fur. "You're a good horsey," she whispered, running her small hands over his neck. "My daddy said he would be back, but he didn't come back, did he? He left me alone in that dark place." The horse responded with a low whinny, almost as if he were talking to her. His intelligent eyes studied the child, realizing that she was starting to develop a fever. Lily's skin was too hot, and she began to hallucinate, calling for the mother she had lost as a baby. During the first night in the grotto, the storm continued relentlessly. Lily woke up constantly, frightened by the thunder that echoed through the stone walls. Every time this happened, the horse moved delicately, placing his head over the girl's body so that she would feel protected. It was as if he understood that she needed to know that she was not alone. On the second day, Lily's fever had worsened. She said nonsensical things, sometimes yelling for Richard, other times crying for her dead mother. The horse knew that the child needed water and food, but she was too weak to leave the grotto. It was then that he made a decision that defied all the instincts of a wild animal. Leaving Lily sleeping on the bed of dry leaves, the horse left the grotto and began to explore the surroundings. The rain had stopped, but the ground was still, wet and slippery. He knew that region like the back of his hoof, knew where to find the sweetest fruits and where the water was cleanest. First, he brought small branches with wild berries, carefully depositing them next to the sleeping girl. Lily woke up with the sweet smell of the fruits and, even with a high fever, managed to eat some. They were small and tart, but they quenched the hunger that was beginning to pinch her stomach. The horse watched her every move, ready to act if she needed anything. During the third day, Lily's situation deteriorated even further. She began to have violent chills, followed by moments of intense heat. Her thin little body was becoming even more fragile, and she had lost weight that she didn't have to lose. The horse, realizing the seriousness of the situation, began to grow restless. "Horsey," she murmured one of the times she woke up, "I think I'm going to get sick like Mummy got. She left and never came back. Are you going to leave too?" The animal approached and touched his muzzle to the girl's face, as if making a silent promise. No, he wouldn't leave. No matter how sick she became, he would be there to take care of her. That night, Lily had terrible nightmares. She dreamed of Richard tying her to the tree repeatedly. She dreamed of bright eyes in the darkness. She dreamed of her mother calling her name from a very distant place. She woke up screaming, and the horse was always there, offering his warmth and his comforting presence. It was on the morning of the fourth day that everything changed. Lily had slept deeply for the first time since arriving at the grotto, and her fever had finally dropped a little. She managed to sit up on her own and eat some fruit without help. The horse watched everything carefully, as if assessing whether she was strong enough to leave her refuge. "I feel better," she said, her voice still weak but clearer than it had been in recent days. "Thank you for taking care of me. You're the best friend I've ever had." The horse whinnied softly, and for the first time since they arrived at the grotto, Lily smiled. It was a small and tired smile, but it was real. She was beginning to recover, at least physically, but the tranquility was short-lived. Outside, the sound of human voices echoed through the woods. Someone was approaching the grotto, and the horse immediately put himself on alert. Lily huddled behind him, fear returning to take over her heart. "Could it be Daddy?" she whispered, but there was more fear than hope in her voice. The horse did not answer, but his tense muscles indicated that he was ready to defend the child, no matter the cost. The voices were getting closer and closer, and among them, one stood out. It was a woman's voice, soft and worried, very different from Richard's rough voice. "Good heavens, what creature is that?" The voice echoed at the entrance of the grotto. "A girl and a horse. How did you two end up here?" Lily raised her eyes and saw an elderly woman standing at the entrance of the grotto, dressed in simple clothes and holding a wooden staff. Her grey hair was tied in a loose bun, and her brown eyes shone with a kindness that the girl had not seen for a long time. "Don't be afraid," said the woman, approaching slowly. "I am Evelyn Sawyer. I came here to look for medicinal herbs and heard a horse whinnying. Are you hurt?" The horse maintained his protective position, but did not show aggression. It was as if he could sense that this woman posed no danger to Lily. The girl, still weak and confused, began to cry softly. "I want to go home," she sobbed. "But Daddy left me alone in the forest. He said he was coming back, but he didn't come back." Evelyn knelt at the entrance of the grotto, her heart breaking as she saw the child's condition. She had heard rumors in town about a missing girl, but never imagined finding her in such conditions. What impressed her most was the way the horse protected the little one, as if he were a guardian sent from the heavens. "What's your name, my child?" Evelyn asked in a gentle voice. "Lily," replied the girl, wiping her nose with the sleeve of her dirty dress. The name echoed in Evelyn's mind like an alarm bell. Lily Sterling. the daughter of Richard, the richest and most powerful man in the county. But if she was Richard's daughter, what was she doing alone in the woods, clearly abandoned and sick? "Come with me, my child," said Evelyn, extending her arms. "I'll take care of you." But when Lily tried to get up to go to her, the horse stood in her way, blocking the path. He stared at Evelyn as if assessing her intentions. Only when the woman stood still, demonstrating that there was no haste or aggression, did the animal finally step aside. "Can he come too?" Lily asked, clinging to the horse's mane. "I don't want to leave him alone. He took care of me when I was sick." Evelyn looked at the horse, then at the girl, and made a decision that would change all their lives. Of course he could come. Any being capable of so much love and protection deserved a safe home. Evelyn Sawyer's farm was a 2-hour walk from the grotto, hidden among hills covered with native vegetation. It was a simple place, with a white-painted adobe house and a yard full of medicinal plants that she had been cultivating with love for decades. At 67, Evelyn was known in the area as one of the best folk healers, capable of curing everything from headaches to more serious problems with her herbs and prayers. Carrying Lily home wasn't an easy task. The girl was too weak to walk on her own, and the horse refused to let anyone else touch her. It took a lot of patience and gentle talking to convince the animal that Evelyn posed no danger. Finally, the horse allowed the woman to carry the child, but he never strayed more than a few steps away, always alert and protective. "You are a very special horse," Evelyn murmured during the walk, watching how the animal constantly checked to see if Lily was okay. "It seems that the good Lord sent you to take care of this child." When they arrived at the farm, Evelyn immediately prepared a warm bath with soothing herbs for Lily. The girl was dirty, with scratches all over her body and still trembling from the trauma. The dress she was wearing was in tatters, soaked and smelling of mildew. While she prepared the water, Evelyn watched as the horse stood outside the house, clearly waiting to make sure his ward was safe. "There's no need to be afraid," Evelyn said softly as she helped Lily take off her wet clothes. "You are safe here, and so is your horse friend." During the bath, Lily began to speak in disjointed fragments. Between sobs and shivers, she told pieces of the story she had lived, how Richard had taken her to the woods in the middle of the night, how he tied her to the tree and left, how she had screamed for him until her voice was hoarse. Evelyn listened to everything with growing horror, her eyes filling with tears of indignation. "My daddy said he would come back," Lily repeated constantly, "but he didn't come back. He left me alone for the monsters to get me." Evelyn dried the girl with a soft towel and dressed her in an old but clean and warm nightgown. Then she prepared chamomile tea with honey and sat next to the makeshift bed she had made in the living room. Lily drank the tea slowly, her small hands still trembling as she held the mug. "Where's my horse friend?" she asked, worried. "He's out there, honey. He's eating grass and drinking fresh water. He won't leave while you're here." And it was true. The horse had found a corner in the yard where he could see the window of the house. He grazed peacefully, but his eyes never stopped, watching. Any strange movement, any different sound, and he raised his head, alert. In the following days, Evelyn cared for Lily as if she were her own granddaughter. The girl was malnourished, traumatized, and showed clear signs of neglect. Her nails were dirty and long, her hair was tangled and full of knots, and she had several small wounds on her body. But what worried Evelyn the most was the child's emotional state. Lily woke up every night screaming, having nightmares about the night she was abandoned. She refused to be alone for more than a few minutes, and whenever she heard footsteps approaching the house, she ran to hide. During the day, she sat at the window, watching the horse and drawing strange figures on the ground with pieces of charcoal she found. "What are you drawing, my dear?" Evelyn asked on a sunny day in April. Lily showed the drawings, a large dark figure tying a small figure to a tree, then the large figure leaving the small one alone in the dark. The drawings were primitive, but the story they told was all too clear. "That's Daddy," Lily said, pointing to the dark figure. "He tied me up and left. He lied when he said he was coming back." Evelyn felt her heart clench. With each passing day, it became clearer that Richard Sterling had deliberately abandoned his daughter in the woods. But why? What kind of father would do such a thing to a child of only 4 years old? Meanwhile, in town, Richard spread a very different version of the story. He had reported Lily's disappearance to the authorities, saying that she had been kidnapped while playing in the yard. He offered a generous reward for information about the girl's whereabouts and won the sympathy of the entire population. "Poor Richard," the women commented at church. "To lose his daughter like that, he must be suffering so much." "He doesn't." "Stop looking," the men said at the bar. "He even hired a private detective. He must be spending a fortune to find the girl." Richard played his role of desperate father very well. He appeared in public with red eyes, as if he had spent sleepless nights crying. He spoke of his daughter with a choked voice, always mentioning how special she was, how she was the reason for his life. It was a convincing performance, and the whole town believed him. But as the days passed, Evelyn began to suspect. She knew Richard by sight, knew of his reputation as a tough man in business, but had always considered him a decent person. Now, listening to Lily's fragmented accounts, she began to question everything she thought she knew about him. "Evelyn," said her neighbor Joe one afternoon, when he came to get medicine for his wife, "haven't you heard about Richard Sterling's daughter who disappeared? They say she was kidnapped. Terrible thing." "I heard about it," Evelyn replied, choosing her words carefully. "Terrible indeed, such a small child. The man is offering $5,000 for anyone who brings information about the girl. That's a whole heap of money, isn't it? $5,000. A fortune for most people in the area." Evelyn remained silent, but her mind was working. Quickly, if Richard was so desperate to find his daughter, why hadn't he searched the woods where she was found? Why hadn't he organized searches in the region? It seemed that he was more interested in maintaining appearances than in actually finding Lily. That night, after Lily finally fell asleep, Evelyn went out to the yard, where the horse was resting. The animal raised his head when he saw her approaching, but did not show fear. In recent days, he had learned to trust the old woman. "You know something, don't you?" she whispered, stroking the animal's neck. "You saw what happened that night. I wish you could tell me." The horse whinnied softly, as if he were trying to communicate. His intelligent eyes seemed to carry secrets that he couldn't share. But one thing was clear. He had saved Lily from something terrible, and now he was determined to protect her from any danger. It was then that Evelyn made a decision that would change everything. She would not return Lily to Richard, not until she discovered the truth about what really happened that night in the woods. The child was safe there, was recovering, and had a protector who would never abandon her. But maintaining that decision wouldn't be easy. The next morning, when she woke up, Evelyn found a car parked on the road in front of her farm. It was a black, luxurious car, very different from the simple vehicles that usually pass by. And inside it, she could see the silhouette of a man. Watching her house, Richard Sterling had arrived. Richard got out of the car with calculated steps, his imposing presence contrasting with the simplicity of Evelyn's farm. He wore an expensive suit, even on that Saturday morning, and his cold eyes swept the surroundings as if he were evaluating a property to buy. The horse, who was grazing peacefully in the yard, immediately raised his head and stood at attention. "Mrs. Evelyn Sawyer," his voice echoed through the yard, laden with an authority that he was used to wielding. "I need to talk to you." Evelyn came out of the house, wiping her hands on her apron, but her heart was racing. Behind her, Lily peeked through the living room window, and upon recognizing Richard's voice, her little face paled completely. The girl quickly hid behind the curtains, trembling with fear. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," said Evelyn, trying to keep her voice steady. "How can I help you?" "You know very well why I'm here," Richard replied, approaching a few steps. "My daughter Lily is with you. I've come to get her." "Your daughter?" Evelyn feigned surprise, although she knew this time would come. "Sir, I don't know what you're talking about." Richard smiled, but it was an icy smile without any trace of humor. "Mrs. Sawyer, let's stop playing games. Joe, your neighbor, mentioned that you were taking care of a child, a little girl with a white horse. That's not too much of a coincidence, is it?" The horse began to approach, his muscles tense and his nostrils flared. He recognized the man's scent, and every instinct in his body screamed danger. Richard noticed the animal's movement, and his expression hardened even more. "That horse! It's him!" Richard muttered, more to himself than to Evelyn. "The damn animal that ruins everything." "Mr. Sterling," said Evelyn, taking a step forward, "if that child is really your daughter, then you need to explain to me how she ended up alone in the woods, tied to a tree, almost being eaten by wild animals." Richard's face contorted into an expression of controlled anger. "You don't know anything. My daughter was kidnapped. Thank God someone found her, but now she needs to come home where she belongs." "Kidnapped?" Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Then can you explain to me why she is so afraid to go home? Why she draws figures of a big man tying a child to a tree?" For a moment, something akin to panic passed through Richard's eyes, but he recovered quickly, assuming an even more threatening posture. "Look here, old woman," his voice dropped to a dangerous tone. "I don't know what game you're trying to play, but it's going to stop now. Lily is my daughter, and she's coming back with me today, whether she wants to or not. If you try to stop me, I'll call the police and accuse you of kidnapping." "Kidnapping!" Evelyn almost shouted, indignant. "I saved that child. She was sick, abandoned, traumatized. If anyone here has committed a crime, it was you." "Prove it," Richard said coldly. "The word of an old folk healer against mine. Who do you think they'll believe?" At that moment a small, trembling voice was heard behind Evelyn. "I don't want to go." Lily had come out of the house and was standing on the porch, her blue eyes full of tears. The horse immediately moved to stand between her and Richard, like a protective shield. "Lily, my daughter." Richard completely changed his tone of voice, assuming a posture of loving father. "Daddy was so worried. Come here, let's go home." But Lily cowered even more, clinging to Evelyn's skirt. "I don't want to go. You left me, alone in the forest. You lied when you said you were coming back." "Honey, you're confused," Richard said, trying to approach. "You were kidnapped, remember? Daddy looked for you every day. Now let's go home. You need to rest." The horse neighed loudly, a warning sound that made Richard stop where he was. The animal lowered his head, showing that he was ready to attack. "If necessary, get that horse away," Richard ordered, losing his composure. "He's dangerous." "He's not dangerous," said Lily, finding courage for the first time. "He saved me. He took care of me when you left me alone for the monsters to eat me." Richard took a deep breath, clearly trying to control his anger. He looked around, checking if there was anyone nearby who could hear them, then approached closer. "Lily, you're coming with me now, or I'll have Mrs. Sawyer arrested for kidnapping," he said, his voice low but threatening. "Do you want your friend to go to jail?" Lily's eyes widened in horror. She looked at Evelyn, who had become like a grandmother to her, then at the horse who had risked everything to save her. She couldn't let them hurt either of them. "No," she whispered, "don't hurt her. I'll go with you." "Lily, no," said Evelyn, kneeling down to the girl's height. "You don't have to go if you don't want to." "I have to," Lily replied, tears running down her face. "Otherwise, he'll hurt you." Richard smiled triumphantly. "Let's go, Lily. It's time for us to go." But when Lily took a step towards her father, the horse moved, blocking the way. The animal looked directly into Richard's eyes, and for a moment, there seemed to be a silent communication between them. The horse knew who the real enemy was. "Get out of the way, you stupid animal," Richard snarled, grabbing a stick that was leaning against the fence. "No!" Lily screamed, running to place herself between the horse and Richard. "Don't hurt him!" Richard stopped, realizing that he had lost control of the situation. He took a deep breath and forced a fake smile. "Okay, honey, Daddy won't hurt the horse, but you need to come with me now." Lily looked at Evelyn, then at the horse, and finally at Richard. With a broken heart, she approached the man who had abandoned her in the woods. Can I say goodbye to them?" she asked, her voice almost inaudible. "Sure," Richard said, impatient, "but make it quick." Lily hugged Evelyn tightly, whispering in her ear, "Thank you for taking care of me. I'll never forget you." Then she approached the horse and buried her face in his white mane. "Thank you for saving me," she murmured. "Please, don't forget me." The horse whinnied softly, resting his head on the girl's shoulder. It was as if he were making a promise. Richard took Lily by the hand and led her to the car. Evelyn watched helplessly as he put the child in the back seat and closed the door. Before getting into the car, he turned to her. "If you try to interfere with my family again, I guarantee you'll regret it," he said, his voice laden with threat. "And as for that horse, he's trespassing. It would be a shame if something happened to him." Richard got into the car and drove away, taking Lily with him. The girl pressed her face against the rear window, watching the horse and Evelyn get smaller and smaller until they disappeared completely. Evelyn stood in the middle of the yard, tears running down her face. Beside her, the horse neighed loudly, a sound of lament that echoed through the hills. Both knew that Lily was being taken back to the place where she wasn't safe, but the horse didn't give up. As the car disappeared down the road, he began to run, following the scent and the sound of the engine. No matter what happened, he would not abandon his little ward. At the Sterling mansion, Lily was greeted with a party by the servants, who had been instructed to treat her as a daughter returning home after a traumatic kidnapping. But when the doors closed and there was no one else to see, Lily's real hell was just beginning. The Sterling mansion stood imposingly in the center of Harmony Creek, surrounded by manicured gardens and high walls that isolated it from the rest of the town. On the outside, it was the perfect image of prosperity and family harmony. Inside, it hid dark secrets that only its inhabitants knew. Eleanor Sterling, at 48, watched from the second-floor window as Richard brought Lily back home. Her hands clenched against the windowsill, and an expression of disgust took over her face when she saw the girl get out of the car. Eleanor had always hated Lily, not only because she represented a constant reminder of Richard's betrayals, but for something much deeper and more disturbing. "She's back," Eleanor murmured to herself, her voice filled with bitterness. "The little bastard is back." In the 5 days that Lily had been missing, Eleanor had experienced a peace that she hadn't felt in years. The house was silent, without the child's little footsteps in the hallways, without her voice calling for Richard, without her constant presence reminding her that she wasn't the only woman in her husband's life. But now she was back, and Eleanor knew that her tranquility was over. During the first week after her return, Richard made an effort to maintain appearances. He took Lily to the doctor for a full checkup, bought her new clothes, and even hired a private tutor so that she wouldn't have to leave the house for a while. In front of the employees and visitors, he was the dedicated father, concerned about his daughter's well-being after the kidnapping. But Lily wasn't the same child as before. The time in the woods and Evelyn's care had awakened in her an awareness that didn't exist previously. She now knew how to recognize the malice in Richard's eyes and perceived Eleanor's poorly disguised hatred. The girl had developed selective mutism, speaking only when absolutely necessary, and her answers were always short and direct. "How are you feeling, honey?" Richard asked during meals, always in the presence of the servants. "Fine," Lily replied, but her blue eyes didn't meet his. "Do you remember anything about the people who took you?" "No," she lied, knowing instinctively that telling the truth would only bring more trouble. But at night, when the house became silent and dark, Lily transformed into a completely different child. She cried softly, calling for Evelyn and the white horse that had saved her. She drew obsessively with pencils and crayons, always the same images: a white horse, an old woman smiling, and herself, far away from them. It was after the first week that Eleanor began to show her true face. Richard had traveled to Louisville to resolve ranch business and planned to be away for 3 days. As soon as his car disappeared down the road, Eleanor called all the employees and gave them an unexpected day off. "You can all go home early. Today," she said, smiling strangely. "I'll take care of everything here." When the house was empty, only she and Lily, Eleanor finally removed the mask she wore in the presence of others. She walked down the stairs slowly, her heels echoing on the marble of the entrance hall, and found Lily playing in the living room with some dolls. "Lily." Her voice was different now, cold and cruel. "Come here." The girl looked up and immediately noticed the change. Something in Eleanor's eyes made her recoil instinctively. "I told you to come here," Eleanor repeated, her voice rising a tone. "Now." Lily stood up slowly and approached, keeping her distance. Eleanor grabbed her by the arm, squeezing hard enough to leave marks. "You think you're very clever, don't you?" Eleanor hissed. "Showing up here again, making your father worry, spending money on doctors and new clothes. You're nothing but a parasite." "You're hurting me," Lily whispered, trying to break free. "I've barely started," Eleanor replied, dragging the girl upstairs. "You're going to learn your place in this house." Eleanor opened the door to a small room at the back of the house, a room that was used to store old objects. There were no windows, only a skylight in the ceiling that let in some light during the day. The floor was cold wood, and there was an old bed in the corner. "This is going to be your room from now on," Eleanor said, pushing Lily inside. "When your father is home, you can pretend to sleep in the nice room, but when he travels, you come here." "Please," Lily pleaded, tears running down her face. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You existing is wrong enough," Eleanor retorted, closing the door and turning the key in the lock. Lily was alone in the dark, listening to Eleanor's footsteps fade away down the hallway. She banged on the door, screamed for help, but no one answered. The house was empty, and her voice was lost in the empty corridors. During the 3 days that Richard was away, Lily lived a nightmare. Eleanor locked her in the room during the day, releasing her only to eat, and even then, only 1 meal a day. The food was always cold and insufficient, leftovers from what she herself had eaten. "Eat fast," Eleanor ordered, timing her. "You have 5 minutes." Lily ate desperately, knowing that she wouldn't have another opportunity until the next day. Eleanor watched her with a cruel smile, clearly satisfied with the child's suffering. "If you tell your father anything," Eleanor said on the second day, "I'll say you're lying. Who do you think he'll believe? His wife or a traumatized child who everyone knows is confused?" But Lily wasn't alone in her suffering. Outside, in the gardens of the mansion, a white figure moved among the shadows. The horse had found his way to Richard's house and was now circling the property, looking for a way to reach his little ward. During the night, when everything was silent, the horse approached the house and neighed softly. It was a gentle sound, almost like a lullaby, and Lily, locked in her prison room, heard and consoled herself, knowing that she wasn't completely abandoned. "You came to find me," she whispered to the skylight, imagining that the horse could hear her. "You didn't forget me." On the third day, when Richard was returning from his trip, Eleanor released Lily from the room and took her to the bathroom. The girl was dirty, with her hair tangled and marks on her arms where she had been grabbed. Tightly. "Take a bath and get dressed," Eleanor ordered. "Your father is coming, and you're going to pretend that you're fine. If you say a word about these 3 days, I guarantee it'll be much worse next time." Lily obeyed in silence, but something had changed in her during those 3 days of suffering. The frightened child was beginning to transform into someone stronger, someone who knew she needed to find a way to survive. When Richard arrived home, he found Lily sitting in the living room, playing with her dolls as if nothing had happened. But he noticed something different in her eyes, a distance that hadn't existed before his trip. "How was everything here?" he asked Eleanor, kissing her on the face. "Very quiet," she replied, smiling sweetly. Lily was a very well-behaved girl, but that night, when everyone was already asleep, Lily got up silently and went to the window of her room. Outside, bathed in moonlight, was the white horse, waiting patiently. She opened the window and whispered, "I know you're out there. Thank you for not abandoning me." The horse whinnied softly in response, and Lily knew that no matter what Eleanor did to her, she wasn't completely alone. Her four-legged guardian angel was there, and somehow he would find a way to save her again. But what Lily didn't know was that Richard had seen the horse in the gardens and was planning a definitive solution to that problem. The silent war that was being waged in that house was just beginning and would soon reach its breaking point. The Kentucky winter arrived in full force in January, bringing freezing nights and cloudy days that seemed to reflect the sadness that was taking over Lily's life. The girl had developed a persistent cough that Richard completely ignored, claiming it was just a child's cold. But Eleanor knew it was something more serious and secretly hoped it would get worse. During one of the coldest nights of the year, when the temperature plummeted to near zero, Lily woke up struggling to breathe. Her chest wheezed with every breath, and she felt like she was drowning in her own air. The fever had returned with force, and her thin body trembled violently under the thin blankets that Eleanor allowed her to use. It was the horse that saved her life once again. Realizing that something was wrong, the animal began to neigh loudly in the middle of the night, a desperate sound that echoed throughout the property. The noise was so constant and distressing that it woke up the neighbors, who began to complain and call the police. Evelyn, who had moved to a small house closer to town so she could watch over Lily from afar, heard the whinnies and immediately knew that something terrible was happening. She dressed quickly and went out into the freezing night, following the sound until she reached the gates of the Sterling mansion. "My God," she murmured as she saw the horse running in desperate circles in the garden. "He's trying to call me." Evelyn climbed over the low wall at the back of the property and ran to the house. The lights were off, but she knew that Lily was in mortal danger. She found an open window on the ground floor and entered, guided only by the moonlight and her instincts as a folk healer. She found Lily in the small room at the back, unconscious and with bluish lips. The child had advanced pneumonia, a result of the constant mistreatment and exposure to the cold. Without hesitation, Evelyn carried the girl in her arms and took her to her house, where she spent the next 15 days fighting against death to save her. There were days and nights of medicinal teas, warm compresses, whispered prayers, and constant vigil. The horse remained in Evelyn's yard during all this time, as if he knew that his presence was necessary for Lily's recovery. Gradually, miraculously, the girl began to improve. It was during these days of recovery that Eleanor, consumed by remorse and fear that Lily would die and she would be discovered, made a decision that would change everything. She went to the attic of the mansion and searched among old boxes until she found what she was looking for, a metal box containing documents that Richard had kept for years. Inside the box, Eleanor found papers that revealed the truth about Lily. The girl wasn't Richard's biological daughter. He had bought her from Betty Sanders, a young woman of only 16 who had become pregnant and couldn't afford to raise the child. The payment had been just $2,000, and there was a signed contract transferring all rights to the child to Richard. But there was more. Other letters showed that Richard used Lily as a decorative piece at social events, showing her off when he wanted to project an image of a family man, but completely neglecting her at home. And the most shocking, notes written by Richard himself detailing his plan to use the girl as bait for the Panther, considering her expendable and a burden that would finally serve a useful purpose. Eleanor was horrified. As much as she hated Lily, she never imagined that Richard was capable of such cruelty. She copied all the documents and secretly took them to Evelyn, who was taking care of the girl. "I always knew there was something wrong," Evelyn said, reading the papers with tears in her eyes, "but I never imagined it was so terrible." "I need you to know," Eleanor said, her voice trembling, "I did horrible things to that child. I let jealousy and anger blind me, but when I saw that she almost died because of me, I can't live with that anymore." Meanwhile, Richard realized Lily's disappearance and panicked. This time he couldn't pretend that she had been kidnapped again. He searched for her desperately, knowing that if the truth came to light, his reputation and his businesses would be ruined. The solution came when he discovered where Lily was. Richard appeared at Evelyn's house on a sunny afternoon, but this time he wasn't alone. He brought with him 2 large men who worked on his ranch, clearly meant to intimidate. "This time you won't stop me," he said, seeing Lily playing in the yard with the horse, "and I'll solve the problem of that animal once and for all." Richard pulled out a shotgun that he had brought hidden in the car. His eyes were filled with a cold, calculating rage. "You choose, Lily. Either you come with me now, or I kill your horse in front of you." Lily looked at the horse, then at Evelyn, and something changed in her gaze. For the first time in months, she didn't show fear. Instead, there was determination. "No," she said, her voice clear and firm. "You're not my father, and I won't let you hurt me anymore." "What did you say?" Richard was perplexed by the change. "In the girl." "I said no," Lily repeated, placing herself in front of the horse. "I remember everything. You tied me to the tree and left. You wanted the monsters to eat me. You're evil." Richard raised the shotgun, but at that moment voices were heard. It was the 4th of July, Independence Day, and the celebration in the town square was in full swing. Many people began to approach Evelyn's house, attracted by the shouts. Among them was Joe, the neighbor, accompanied by several families from the town. And to Richard's horror, Betty Sanders was also there. The young woman, now 20 years old, had recognized Lily at the festival and followed her there, her maternal heart guiding her to the daughter she had been forced to abandon. "Lily!" Betty cried, running towards the girl. "My daughter!" "Mom?" Lily whispered, her eyes filling with tears. Something deep in her memory stirred, a buried memory of loving arms and a lullaby. Richard saw his opportunity slipping away. With more than 20 people watching, he could no longer use force. He tried to maintain his composure. "This woman is delusional," he said, forcing a smile. "Lily is my daughter." It was then that Evelyn stepped forward, holding the documents that Eleanor had given her. "No, Mr. Sterling," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Lily isn't your daughter. You bought her from this poor girl when she was only 16 years old, and then you tried to use the child as bait for a panther." A murmur of shock ran through the crowd. Evelyn continued, telling the whole truth, the abandonment in the woods, the mistreatment, the neglect. She showed the documents, read Richard's own words describing Lily as expendable. The reaction was immediate and furious. The men of the Town advanced towards Richard, who retreated terrified. His reputation, built over decades, crumbled in a few minutes. "Lies!" he shouted, but no one believed him. The evidence was too clear, and everyone had seen the fear in Lily's eyes whenever he approached. Betty ran to Lily and hugged her, the two crying together. "Forgive Mommy," the young woman sobbed. "I never wanted to leave you. They forced me." The white horse approached and touched his muzzle to Lily's shoulder, as if blessing the reunion. The crowd watched, moved, the touching scene of a family reuniting. Richard was expelled from the celebration amidst shouts and insults. In the following months, all his businesses failed, as no one wanted to work with him anymore. Eleanor abandoned him, unable to live with the shame. He ended up alone, despised and bankrupt, living in a small house on the outskirts of town, always avoided by everyone. Lily was officially returned to Betty, who had married and created a stable life. Evelyn continued to be a part of their lives, like the grandmother she had never had. And the white horse. He gained a special place on Betty's small property, where he lived his days protecting the family he had helped to reunite. Years later, whenever someone asked about the almost invisible scar on Lily's arm, she smiled and said, "That's when I learned that sometimes angels have 4 hooves and a white mane, and that true love never abandons those who need it." The horse lived another 15 years, always by Lily's side, watching her grow up, become a teacher, and start her own family. When he finally passed away on a sunny spring afternoon, Lily was holding his head, whispering words of gratitude to the angel who had saved her life when she needed it most. And Richard, he died alone and forgotten, with no one to mourn his passing, paying until the end for the evil he had spread in the world. Justice sometimes takes time, but it always comes to those who choose the path of cruelty.